Dear friends, as we gather today, I would like to share with you some thoughts on fear, a feeling that is all too common in our daily lives. Fear can be both debilitating and motivating, but no matter how we experience it, fear is a part of the human experience. The philosopher Albert Camus, known for his work on absurdism, also had much to say about fear. For Camus, the universe is fundamentally meaningless and indifferent, and as human beings, we are constantly struggling to find meaning in a world that is inherently absurd. In this context, fear can be seen as a natural response to the absurdity of our existence. We fear the unknown, the uncertain, and the uncontrollable because they remind us of our own vulnerability in the face of the absurd. However, Camus also believed that fear can be transformed into a positive force. He argued that by confronting our fears head-on, we can come to accept the absurdity of our existence and find a sense of freedom in it. Instead of succumbing to our fears, we can embrace them and use them to motivate us to live our lives more fully. In this sense, fear can become a tool for personal growth and self-discovery. By acknowledging our fears and facing them with courage, we can transcend the limitations that fear imposes on us and live more meaningful and fulfilling lives. According to the Stoics, fear is an emotion that arises from our beliefs about what is good or bad for us. When we believe that something bad or harmful is going to happen to us, we experience fear. This can be a powerful and overwhelming emotion, but the Stoics believed that it is possible to overcome it through the practice of virtue. One of the key teachings of Stoicism is that we should focus our attention on what is within our control and accept what is outside of our control with equanimity. This means that we should not waste our energy worrying about things that we cannot change or influence, but instead focus on doing our best with what we have. When it comes to fear, the Stoics believe that we should focus on the things that we can control, such as our thoughts and actions, rather than worrying about things that are outside of our control. By practicing mindfulness and self-awareness, we can learn to recognize our fears and respond to them in a more rational and constructive way. The Stoics also believe that we should cultivate a sense of detachment from external events and outcomes. This does not mean that we should be indifferent to what happens to us, but rather that we should not be overly attached to specific outcomes or expectations. By accepting whatever happens with equanimity, we can reduce the power of fear over us and find greater peace of mind. Finally, the Stoics believed that we should face our fears with courage and wisdom. This means that we should not avoid or deny our fears, but rather confront them head-on and seek to understand them. By doing so, we can learn from our fears and grow as individuals, becoming stronger and more resilient in the face of adversity. Albert Camus was a French philosopher, author, and journalist who is best known for his contributions to the philosophy of absurdism. In his various works, Camus explores fear from different perspectives, examining its impact on human life and the ways in which it can be transcended. By looking at his books, we can see how Camus tackles fear in unique ways. In The Stranger, Camus tells the story of Meursault, a man who kills an Arab man and is put on trial for his crime. Throughout the book, Meursault's lack of emotional response to his situation is interpreted as a sign of his indifference to the world. However, it can also be seen as an attempt to transcend fear, as Meursault refuses to be controlled by societal expectations or his own emotions. The plague explores the human response to a deadly epidemic in a small Algerian town. The characters are initially paralyzed by fear and uncertainty, but as they work together to fight the disease, they begin to find meaning in their struggle. Camus suggests that facing fear together can be a way of transcending it. The Myth of Sisyphus is a philosophical essay that explores the question of whether life is worth living in a world that is fundamentally absurd. Camus argues that the only way to live a meaningful life in the face of this absurdity is to embrace it and find joy in the struggle to create meaning. This can involve confronting our own fears and embracing them as a part of the human experience. In The Rebel, Camus explores the concept of rebellion and its relationship to fear. He argues that rebellion can be a way of transcending fear
by asserting our freedom and autonomy in the face of oppressive structures. However, he also cautions that rebellion can become destructive if it is not tempered by a sense of responsibility and compassion.
Overall, Camus' work offers us a variety of ways to think about and confront fear. His focus on the absurdity of life and the human struggle to find meaning in an indifferent universe can help us to put our fears in perspective and to embrace them as a part of the human experience. By facing our fears with courage and wisdom, and by working together to confront them, we can transcend the limitations that fear imposes on us and find greater meaning and fulfillment in our lives. The Book of Mormon is a religious text that explores the history and teachings of the ancient inhabitants of the American continent. Throughout the text, fear is a recurring theme, with many characters struggling to overcome their fears and find the courage to do what is right. For example, in the story of Nephi and his brothers, Nephi is commanded by God to obtain the brass plates from a wicked king. Despite the danger involved, Nephi is able to overcome his fear and fulfill the commandment, ultimately leading to the preservation of important religious records. Similarly, in the story of Alma and Amulek, the two prophets are imprisoned and threatened with death for preaching the gospel. Despite their fear, they remain steadfast in their faith and are ultimately delivered by divine intervention. Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl is a memoir that explores Frankl's experiences as a prisoner in a Nazi concentration camp during World War II. Despite the unimaginable horrors he faced, Frankl maintains that it is possible to find meaning and purpose even in the most desperate of circumstances. One of the key themes of the book is the power of attitude in the face of adversity. Frankl argues that although we cannot always control our circumstances, we can choose our response to them. By focusing on the things that we can control, such as our own thoughts and actions, we can find a sense of purpose and meaning, even in the darkest of situations. In both the Book of Mormon and Man's Search for Meaning, fear is presented as a natural human emotion that must be overcome in order to achieve our goals and fulfill our potential. Whether we are facing physical danger or emotional challenges, we must find the courage to face our fears and act in accordance with our values and beliefs. By focusing on the things that we can control, such as our own attitudes and actions, we can overcome our fears and find meaning and purpose even in the most difficult of circumstances. Ultimately, it is this ability to transcend fear and find meaning that allows us to lead fulfilling and meaningful lives, even in the face of adversity. From the works of Albert Camus, the Book of Mormon, and Man's Search for Meaning, we can learn a great deal about how to tackle fear in our daily lives. One of the key lessons that we can take away from these works is that fear is a natural human emotion that must be confronted and overcome if we are to achieve our goals and find meaning and purpose in life. To tackle fear, we must first acknowledge it and recognize that it is a natural part of the human experience. We must also recognize that we have a choice in how we respond to our fears. We can either give in to them and allow them to control us, or we can choose to confront them with courage and wisdom. One way to confront our fears is to focus on the things that we can control. Like Viktor Frankl, we can choose our response to our circumstances and focus on the things that we can do to improve our situation. By taking small, manageable steps towards our goals, we can build our confidence and overcome our fears one step at a time. Another way to confront our fears is to seek support from others. Like the characters in The Plague, we can work together with others to face our fears and find meaning in our struggles. Whether it's seeking support from friends and family or seeking professional help, there is no shame in asking for help when we need it. Ultimately, it is our attitude towards fear that determines whether it controls us or whether we control it. By embracing the philosophy of absurdism and recognizing the inherent meaninglessness of life, we can put our fears in perspective and find the courage to face them head-on. By focusing on the things that we can control, seeking support from others, and maintaining a positive attitude, we can transcend our fears and achieve our goals. In conclusion, fear is a natural human emotion that must be confronted and overcome if we are to lead fulfilling and meaningful lives.
By learning from the works of Albert Camus, the Book of Mormon, and Man's Search for Meaning, we can develop the courage and wisdom to face our fears and find purpose and meaning in our lives. So let us embrace our fears, confront them with courage and wisdom, and live the best life possible.